From the Joe Rogan Experience. This is fascinating. In this clip, Jillian Michaels is appearing on a show, and Joe and Jillian both say they were hoaxed by the Maryland man lie. Check this out.
Saying, oh my God, they deported a Maryland man and a father, because that's what I was reading in the news.
Same.
And then you get into it and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, hold on. And then they released the dash cam footage, the police footage of when they arrested him. Not dash cam, whatever the cops are wearing.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I thought the exact same thing.
It's crazy, but it's just like you can't just go on narratives, because these narratives are just designed to make the Trump administration look like monsters.
I was giving an interview to this woman from the New York Times. And she's like, but don't you see this? And I was like, I do see it, and I don't understand it, and I wish it would be different. But then you get into the lesser evils. I wrote her back, and I was like, I don't agree with my previous position based on the current information available to me now.
Yeah, it seems like he was a gang member. But then there was that gay hairdresser that seems like he just got roped up.
I know. And what I have learned so far, because I've really been trying to get to the bottom of that one, because I don't understand why the left isn't leaning on that one.
Right.
The other guy beats his wife, suspected trafficker. You want to be outraged? This guy is a gay hairdresser. I guess he committed. I was listening to Tim Pool talk about this immigration fraud. So listen, that guy's a tough one.
He doesn't belong in an El Salvador prison.
I agree with you completely.
Also, he's not even from El Salvador.
So breaking this down, the one thing I'll say is, I will clarify just in case I spoke poorly. My argument on the gay hairdresser was that if he entered the country illegally through the southern border with the intention of falsely claiming asylum so he could just be an economic migrant here, that would be fraud. However, I do agree. I mean, it is fascinating the left isn't leaning on that story because we don't have a lot of details about it. He was adjudicated to be a MS-13 gang member. I'm sorry, was it MS-13 or Trinidad Aragua? He has the crowns.
MS-13. Yeah. Are you talking about the hairdresser?
Hairdresser.
The hairdresser, I think, had the crowns.
He had the crowns on his wrist. And so there is a challenge there. I even asked the Secretary Noem about this. But anyway, more to the point, what I found fascinating with this clip is it has been 10 years of the Trump era, and still to this day, Joe, and I mean this with no disrespect, of all people, read the news and thought it was true that this guy was just from Maryland. That was the purpose of the Maryland man hoax. So the two things that I wanted to get out on this one with this segment, the reason why I want to talk about this, guys, their strategy, the Maryland man hoax, was working. They were convincing people that this guy, I'm going to say again, Phil, I think you asked this earlier in the show, if the left just believes crazy things. That you has that, right?
Yep.
Is that why we have this culture war? And I largely believe that is true. The example being Hassan Piker. I know I bring him up because this is a really great example. He genuinely believed this guy was from Maryland. I would be mad too if the news came out that Trump rounded up an American citizen and sent him to a El Salvadoran prison. I'd be saying what do you mean you're not getting him back? This is crazy. But then it's oh, he's Salvadoran. Oh, he was here illegally. Oh, they found him to be a gang member. Oh, he was arrested with gang members. Oh, he beats his wife on multiple occasions. And he was deported due to an administrative error. So it wasn't a crime. It was a mistake. What's the problem? That was the goal of their hoax. But I want to stress, thanks to all of you guys, everybody who watches this show, and the work of all of the alternative media space calling out the Maryland man hoax, we've shattered that narrative. We have shattered their attempt to lie. And you can see now Jillian Michaels saying she called back the New York Times and said, I don't stand by that anymore. I take back. Amazing.
So you information vaccinated Jillian Michaels? How's it feel, Dr. Tim?
I don't think I did, actually. I think they both said they believed it.
So it was antibiotic, because then she said after she watched you.
Yes, there we go.
So, but I do want to stress, because she did say I was listening to Tim Pool, and I guess he committed immigration fraud. I'm like, whoa. My argument is, the reason why we deport these people is they illegally enter the country through the southern border, then afterwards try and falsely claim asylum when they don't actually need it. If he came from Venezuela and was in Mexico, Mexico's awesome. Guys, have you been to Mexico?
Yeah.
No.
Have you? No, Phil?
Yep. And I don't want to go.
It is awesome. Where in Mexico did you go?
I went to Mazunte.
Oh, wow. That sounds cool.
Sick.
Yeah.
Is that just resort areas? I think resort areas in Mexico might be awesome, but Mexico proper probably
I've
sucks.
also been to Tijuana. I did not like Tijuana, but I love Mazunte. I almost moved there.
Is that a resort area or?
It's not resort. I mean, at least at the time it wasn't. It's just like a small beach town.
I went to one of the resort areas. I think it was Temecula. I'm not sure. That might be wrong, though. But I also went to Mexico City. I've been to Aguascalientes. I went to Monterrey.
You've been everywhere. You played everywhere. Look, I'll just say this.
Oh, you toured there,
Obviously, there's bad crime-ridden cartel areas in Mexico, but nobody goes like, oh, I don't know, America sucks. Don't go to Detroit. It's like, no, America's great. Here's where you go. Mexico's got great places. My point being, this Venezuelan guy who travels from Venezuela through Central America, through Mexico, all these countries, claiming, oh, I'm being persecuted in my home country. Okay, Mexico's right there, bro. They got Buffalo Wild Wings. It's fantastic. Why don't you stay there? Why did you illegally enter the United States? My argument is, I would argue that is fraud, not that he was convicted or charged with having committed fraud.
Can I actually just, we talked about this Judge Dugan case where she tried to help this illegal immigrant escape. And now we're talking about this case where people are rallying around Abrao Garcia rather than the hairdresser. And there's this very strange, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this thesis. There's this very strange worldview on parts of the left where they celebrate the worst of them. Yeah. And they actually shun the best of them. Right. So like they pushed RFK away. They pushed Tulsi Gabbard away. Today, I don't know if you guys saw this David Hogg thing.
Yes.
I don't have a super high of opinion of them, but from the things I've heard is like, okay, there's some sanity left on the left. And
they're kicking him out now.
They kick him out too. It's like, you guys are actually self-defeating. This whole worldview is self-defeating, and no one is actually responsible for their own decision. If you're a criminal, it's probably because you were just disadvantaged. You're not responsible for anything if you had bad starting conditions. And yeah, I think it's very strange, and I think Jillian correctly observed, why are they rallying against this around this guy when they have a better alternative right next to him?
So I think it's actually a political strategy to try to pick one of the worst peoples to try to open up the Overton window as far as you can go. I think for the gay hairdresser, it might have been too simple of an issue. For this other guy, they were trying to really have people sympathize with a gang member, but that really widens the Overton window and allows them to do more.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
The fact that he was a gang member was the intent, so that they could create a scenario where people would have to, they wanted Democrats to be tribally defending a gang member.
Yeah. And then you can justify anything. If a gang member is not responsible for his crimes, then who's responsible for anything?
Illegal gang members deserve full due process like they're American citizens.
Let's think about the strategy. The strategy would be, okay, if they go with the gay hairdresser guy, then the argument is, okay, Trump can deport all the criminals.
Everybody worse.
So if they go with the worst criminal, first you say he's a Maryland man. All the liberals then defend him. Then when the news breaks that he's a criminal, which the Democrats and the prominent liberals want to happen, they then say it's not about whether he's a criminal. Like you said, it's about due process. The liberals will tribally then double down and say it is fine. And this will shift the Overton window towards, we must protect MS-13 gang members because they deserve rights like everybody else.
And then they'll gaslight you. Oh, it barely said MS-13. It was just marijuana, smiley face, cross, and a 3, like, on his hands. Like skull. So it's just like, so they'll try to use this ambiguity. Oh, his girlfriend or wife at the time called the police because maybe he beat him or beat her or something. So I think
this strikes in the face.
So I think it's again a kind of a political strategy, and because it's not even for. When the left tries to say that police also will kill unarmed black men, they'll pick like the worst cases or picked armed black men to show them killing to try to perpetuate this narrative. And they'll always choose the worst cases because, again, they're trying to extend the Overton window.
Yeah, it's an interesting theory. And I don't know if I have to push back or just comment on something you just said because I'm not sure what you actually believe on this. I think due process is important. I think, the Constitution guarantees due process for everyone. I think what's not being talked about is what is due process in each case. Because due process for an illegal gang member is not necessarily the same as a due process for an American citizen. Because due process
it's literally not.
Yeah, it's qualitative. Yes. It's like a fair process. A fair process, it varies based on the situation. So yeah, I think it's fair to say this guy deserves due process, of course. But what's happening is, they're using due process as a Trojan horse to try to convince you that, he's just a Maryland man. Or, there's no reason to believe that he's in the country illegally or all these other things.
You know what I think this is? There's a loss of the understanding of root language. And so what ends up happening is when I was a kid, the teenage girls at my high school thought the word ignorant meant rude. They didn't understand because they just heard someone say a racial slur and then someone responded, that's ignorant. And the intention was that person doesn't understand what they're doing. They hear it and the context is rude. So what happens is people hear the phrase due process and they think it's Latin. They think it means some Latin, it's some Latin term, mens rea. It's just a legal term that means you get a trial. Due process is a literal English phrase. We don't even need to say due process. We can say fair hearing.
Yes.
We can say fair process. It is the process you are due under the law. It's not universal. Due process literally just means legal processes that you are due. So it's what's happened is even conservatives think due process means trial.
Exactly.
And I'm seeing on Twitter, on X, liberals will be like, why aren't they getting due process? And they'll say, I'll see a response from a conservative guy being like, illegal immigrants shouldn't get trials. And I'm like, you're arguing two different things. The legal and fair process by which a person goes through our legal system to determine whether they're right, wrong, deportable, or criminal is due process. Not getting due process means you were not treated fairly. That's all it means.
I think it's a level
But
of
fact
due process.
statement, not an opinion.
I think, illegal immigrants should get a different level of due process, a lower level of due process than.
I got to stop you there. Once again, the phrase due process is being used as a Latin term. They should get a different level of what is fair for them.
Yeah.
No, everybody should get what is fair for them.
Okay.
Due process means fair treatment of the law. That's all it means.
Yeah.
Illegal immigrants, what is fair? An ICE agent will review their status, determine if they're a citizen, and if not, and if they've been here less than 2 years, expedited removal.
Yes.
That is due process.
Yes.
It is the fair treatment under the law that they receive based on the codified law set forth by Congress and the Constitution.
I agree. It's a linguistic trap that I see many conservatives falling into, where they're arguing that due process is not due when they need to argue, no, due process is being served, and this is what's due process in this case.
Exactly.
And the argument for okay, how are we going to remove 10 to 20 million people in the country? We can give them all due process, and due process might mean a day in court, rather than this years-long thing that we have to do that makes it impossible to actually enforce the law.
This is the game they're playing. Donald Trump made a statement, we shouldn't give trials to every illegal immigrant. The media then came out and said Trump is trying to deny due process to illegal immigrants because they want to shift the Overton window and convince you that we cannot deport a person without a trial. Trump was saying, and they're pulling him out of context. Why would we have a trial for illegal immigrants? It would take forever. The context of what Trump is saying is, we don't give illegal immigrants trials. Why would we start now? The media misrepresents what he's saying so that they can try and make the argument that it is normal for all illegal immigrants all the time, everywhere, to get a trial with a judge. Nope. Sometimes you go to an ICE agent and he goes, not a citizen, on the plane.
That's your due process.
That's your due process. Yep. Expedited removal.
That's why words matter.
Yeah. And having gone through all of this and even gone through debates, there are a bunch of different ways that individuals get different degrees of due process. If you've been here longer than 2 years, you get a hearing. You can actually argue for a hearing. If you're being deported under the Alien Enemies Act, which Trump just won that court case, the judge sided with him, she still said, if a person is to be deported under AEA, they can challenge it. That's one of the reasons why Trump was trying to avoid using AEA in some circumstances, because Alien Enemies Act deportation says you are an invader of this country, to which they can say, oh yeah, prove it. Whereas if Trump just says, we've reviewed your citizenship and you are ineligible to be in the United States, so you're being deported, they don't get a hearing.
I think there is also something to say about the amount of illegal immigrants that we have in our country isn't going to be able to be handled by the way we currently have our laws set up. The current system was not set up to be able to give whatever level of due process or however we were going to break it down to 20 million people.
I'm stopping you right now. You did it again.
It's the level of due process.
You said we weren't going to be able to give due process. Wrong. We absolutely. There's no. You misunderstand. Due process just means what is fair under the law. We always, in this country, 100% of the time, seek to give people what is fair under the law. Only when there's malicious prosecution or errors do people not get what's fair under the law. There was never a circumstance by which Trump was going to give people less due process. We will always, 100% of the time, as a country, functionally give illegal immigrants their due process.
Because illegal immigrants abused our immigration laws so aggressively, I think we need to change the way legally how we do due process for some of these illegal migrants.
But we don't, because due process is already a subjective thing. Like, we got to choose what we consider a fair hearing, trial. It can be more than that. So I think what Tim is saying is there's not levels of due process. It's that
the due process under the law, but the law needs
No. There's not levels of due process. Due process is a blanket term that means you'll be treated fairly. That's it. That's all it means.
Let's just say fair process, right? We can give everyone a fair process, but a fair process for, I don't know, tax evasion might look different than a fair process for entering the country illegally. And I do think we need to change something about the courts in order to process this many people who are here illegally. But I think it's actually just expand the capacity of the courts. Like, this is not enough judges. You can't do enough hearings. Like, it needs to be like at least 10x.
Yeah.
But we can give everyone due process, and we should.
Yeah, it's like the process due to you, the process due unto you. It's not like a thing. Like, it's a process that we are going to give you. Like you said, we've decided upon that already. We've made
Just
it fair.
say, instead of saying due process, say treated fairly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
The illegal immigrants who come here will be treated fairly.
I think the illegal immigrants who come here are treated too fairly under the law. And they abused our immigration law. And if we don't change the way we do it, the President Trump won't be able to effectively deport 20 million.
It's not that they're being treated too fairly. It's that all you're saying is we should make it easier to deport them.
Yes.
Look, once again,
I agree.
In many words, legalese.
Right. And I think it's important because it's crazy how the left is using this. The reason why I'm harping on it so much, and I know it's, it might just be semantics, is because the left is using exactly what you're saying. They're going to clip what you said and said, here's a conservative saying less due process.
Yeah.
And then they're going to go to their fans and they're going to say, they're literally saying that they're not going to treat you fairly under the law, that they're going to create special classes of citizens who get special treatment.
Yeah.
No. An illegal immigrant will always get due process. And what is that due process? An ICE agent will say, are you a citizen? They'll say no, and they'll say, on the plane. That's it, like that. That's due process. No judge, no hearing, nothing.
Yeah, and part of the problem with this term is it's not well defined. It's like saying systemic racism. What does that actually mean? No one knows what it means, but people get upset about it, and you keep on moving the goalpost on what's enough. So I agree. We should identify what is the minimum threshold for what we consider fair, and it might be a few hours talking with an ICE agent. I leave that up to the administration to decide, and do that and say we can do that, and let's get to business here.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.